Okay, everybody, I am here today with YC from SoCal Seismic House Bolting, and we're going to talk about why you should get your house retrofitted and what that means, especially if, if you're looking at a home to buy and it's an older building. Let's say, how old are buildings typically not bolted? What age?
It's a good question. Ultimately, it depends on the builder, but I would say a house needs to be bolted if it hasn't had any work since, pre-1979, put it that way.
Okay, pre-1979.
Raised foundation.
Okay, raised foundation.
Yep.
So raised foundation pre-1979. So it's safe to say that there's bolting in those homes, like from maybe 1930s onward.
Yep, correct.
But how many?
Correct. The spacing, the size.
Spacing, the size.
Yep.
So my understanding is around early 1930s is when bolting became mandatory.
Yeah, anchor bolts. Yep.
Anchor bolts. But who implemented that? Was that the building? Was there suddenly a building department code enforcement developed back in the 30s?
It's interesting that you say that. I mean, I think that it was implemented, but the question is who really installed them? You'll go to these houses and you'll have a unframed garage and there are no bolts there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really depended on the builder at the time.
Right. Bob's builder. I always say Bob or Tom or Steve.
Yeah.
They're all building a house right next to each other, and they're sitting there eating lunch one day, and one of them, hey, how many bolts you put in? I forgot my bolts.
What's bolts?
There you go. I got some washers.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's one of those things.
Yeah,
and as in the early 1920s, there was no anchoring.
Right.
Zero. I go under houses weekly, and there's zero anchoring.
And the thing is, John, I mean, let's say it had the anchors. Does it even matter anymore? That's the real thing. I mean, they're not going to be up to code in the first place.
It could be rotted away.
Oh, even if let's say it wasn't and it was in perfect shape, it's still not up to code. The code's really changed after the 94 Northridge earthquake.
Right.
But
it's better than nothing.
Everybody says that, and I do agree. But at the same time, when the Northridge earthquake hit, you saw how those failed.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to say that it should just stay as is. And that's not a sales pitch. It's just, we're going off of facts.
Sure. Well, everything, over evolution is typically an improvement.
Yes, usually.
We'll
end it there, John.
we'll end it right there. But so I've seen houses where you got an anchor in the corner, then you got one 20 feet away. Yep. Yeah, so I'm going to recommend, hey, you know what? This bolting is really old or it's outdated. Yeah. I recommend you contacting a seismic retrofitter.
Yep.
And they can come out and give you a quote.
Yeah.
Now give me off the top of your head, 1,500 square foot house that needs anchoring. What are we talking? How much?
Stem wall foundation or cripple wall foundation?
It would be cripple wall.
Cripple wall. So average cripple wall foundation price is about $5,500 to $6,000, just around that range. Mm-hmm. And a regular stem wall, 1,500 square feet, you're looking at about $4,500.
Okay.
All right.
That's manageable.
Yeah.
All right. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Does the term retrofitting include both bolting and sheathing?
Good question. So if you have a house that has a cripple wall and you just do the bolting but not the sheathing, you're not retrofitted.
I see.
Because you have that seismic weakness in the cripple wall.
All right. So let's clear up what a cripple wall is for listeners.
Yeah. Cripple wall is a miniature vertical stud wall that holds the weight of the home around the perimeter of the home. It's called a cripple wall because during an earthquake, that lateral load cripples. You need to have structural, plywood and bracing and bolts, on that cripple wall or behind the cripple wall to secure it from crippling to the ground. But the difference between a cripple wall foundation and a stem wall foundation would be one has framing and one doesn't. That's the main difference.
Gotcha. So we do have a photo here of that.
Let's see it.
Got it.
There it is. Yep.
Okay, so the picture on the left is what it originally looked like. That looks like a 1920s house.
Yeah, around that time. Yep. Hard for me to remember when.
And then there was no anchoring there either.
Correct.
And on the right side, you'll see that now there's plywood on that wall.
Mm-hmm.
So the wood part is the cripple wall. That's what YC is talking about.
Correct.
And then right here, now that whole cripple wall has plywood covering it. So you can go ahead and explain from there. Like what's up at the holes in there?
Yeah.
What kind of fasteners do you use? And where's the anchor bolts?
Good question. So the first question I actually have for you, John, is photo on the left, cripple wall. Mm-hmm. Okay. When you have cripple wall failure, okay, so the cripple wall is sitting kind of like this,
Mm-hmm.
If you have that failure, how does it fail? Would it go this way? Would it go this way?
Oh, it would typically go this way.
Lateral.
Yeah.
Which is correct. So a lot of people think it goes the other way.
Well, I've seen that happen too, but that's not going to be from seismic activity.
Correct.
That's going to be from something else most likely.
Yep. So when you have that lateral load, it's going to be usually from seismic activity, exactly how you said it. Ultimately, the one on the right, we have the cripple wall bracing and bolting. So the bracing is the cripple wall sheathing right on top. That's all the plywood. And the bolts are right there in the picture. That's the bolting. So a lot of people just think you put sheathing on and you leave. You have to have it actually anchored to the foundation, through the sill plate, to the top plate. We have
I see. So the sheathing has to be anchored into the concrete too?
Not the concrete. It's nailed into the 2x4 vertical studs.
Okay, the sill plate and the studs
Correct.
and the top plate.
Correct. And then the bolts go through the sill plate.
Okay.
The top plate has little brackets that go every 32 inches between every single joist.
Got it.
They're kind of hard to see in this photo, but they're there.
Little angle brackets.
Yeah.
And now
brackets.
Right there on the picture, it says bolt and then brace.
Yep.
So the bolts are hidden on the inside of that plywood, correct?
Correct. It's not hidden inside of it. It's just behind it. It's between the studs.
Okay.
Yeah, there's spacing requirements. So for a one-story home, the retrofitting plates have to go every 6 feet, and for a two-story home, they go every 4.
Okay.
And that varies depending on our engineer. So they're all engineered plan sets. This the spacing, the depth. It's the factors are based on the condition on site.
Okay, got it. All right. Is foundation retrofitting mandatory during a real estate transaction?
No, it's considered an upgrade. It's not a mandatory, repair. I wouldn't even consider it repair. It's just that codes have changed. Right. I think that a lot of people don't realize when it comes down to retrofitting is the insurance companies. You're in California, you're in earthquake country. When it comes down to bracing and bolting, if you're not braced and bolted up to code, you're going to have very, very high insurance premiums. And when I say insurance premiums, I mean earthquake insurance premiums. So have that in mind. Once you get it bolted and braced, your premiums will usually drop between 15 to 25% off. So it's a big number.
Wow. So it's a good investment.
It's a very good investment. You just have to remember one thing, and this is a little bit of a more technical aspect. The deductible could be really high. So
yeah, some people like that though.
Talk with your broker and go from there. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from getting insurance, but have that in mind. I don't have earthquake insurance in my house. Right. I had it bolted and braced. They wanted $110,000 deductible. Right.
But the point I want to send home here to realtors, if you don't know this, you got to pay attention to this because this is not required.
Correct.
So you can't be haggling and fighting with the seller if you're the buyer's agent about, this thing ain't anchored. But look, it's not a mandatory thing. It's a recommended thing.
Yeah.
Is foundation retrofitting required for existing homeowners with raised foundations?
It's not a requirement. No, it's considered an upgrade. And part of our inspection reports, we always separate the repairs from the retrofitting.
Okay.
That way you can tell the difference, what you ask for credit and what you kind of can't.
I see. Right. So a repair is not a credit, but the retrofitting would be
opposite. Repairs are going to be usually credited.
Oh, okay.
The retrofitting, they won't give a credit for.
I thought you said the insurance gave you.
They'll give you a discount.
Oh, a discount.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
People think they'll issue a check. They'll just lower your premiums.
No check?
No check. Sorry, John.
We all like checks.
I'm sure we do.
All right. So here's a question.
Let's hear it.
If a home has a foundation bolting already installed when it was constructed, do you still recommend a retrofit?
Good question. Depends on what year it was constructed. If it was built pre-1979, it's not going to be up to code. We're going to definitely recommend retrofitting.
Oh, okay.
If it's new construction, we're talking about 2018, 2019, 2020, you're going to find the anchor bolts, the square washers. It's going to be up to code. We're not going to have to go ahead and retrofit it.
Okay. So here's a couple loose questions on that.
Yeah.
One time at band camp years ago, I'm just kidding. There's no band camp. But anyway, I did a house. I did a home inspection and a mold inspection because I found a lot of mold there too. So I wound up going back there to do a clearance test for the mold.
Okay.
So while I was there, the realtor said, "Hey, John, I got a question for you." I go, "What's up?" He goes, "Well, in your report, you said there was foundation bolting." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "But I had the foundation guys come by and look at the major repairs, and they said there wasn't any." I said, "They said there wasn't any?" I said, "Okay, come here."
Right.
Grab my flashlight. I'm looking through all
the vent screens.
All of the vent screens, and there was a bolt visible in just about every one of them. I said, "Those are your bolts." And he looked at me and goes, "What the?" I'm
Right.
like, they may have worded what they were saying wrong.
Right.
I'm not calling them liars.
But the bolts were there. Bolts were
The
present.
bolts were right there.
Yep.
And he goes, enough said. So that can happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the confusion there could have been when they said
Translation.
not present. Yeah, I think it was a translation issue. I mean,
Yep.
they could have just said it's not up to code and would have been correct in a sense, depending on what year it was built. I don't know. Do you remember what year it was built?
Yeah, that house was probably,
Was it
say
new
50s,
construction?
1950s.
Okay, so it wasn't, not up to code at all.
Right. So, okay. So as a home inspector, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What's your advice on this for me and any other home inspector who might be watching or listening? Now, if I just tell you what I just described, am I wrong?
Good question.
By saying it's bolted?
Yeah, yeah. So the difference would be writing the verbiage incorrectly. And we see this a lot. So we'll see a general inspection report and they'll write bolts present and that's it. That's where it becomes an issue because the homeowner comes up to us and says, hey, so-and-so did the general inspection. Here's the report. Page 53 shows that there are bolts present. I look at the pictures. I look at the year the house was built, and automatically I can tell it's not up to code. And what they want from us is to sign the insurance form. We can't do that. So I would recommend in that same section to include, not up to current standards. Most people have our,
Building constructed to older standards,
Yep,
including
yep.
seismic bolting and everything else. I have a blanket statement that
There
says
you go,
that on any older house, what it's built to an older standard.
Yeah.
That covers everything
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
John, the homeowners will call us back and say, man, I can't believe the inspector did that. And I'm thinking, he didn't do anything wrong. He's telling you that there are bolts present. Well, I wanted the insurance discount form. It doesn't work like
That's
that.
not his scope of work.
He's not here to call out code. So
Right.
for all the inspectors out there listening, I would definitely recommend including that in there. A lot of people actually have our business card right there.
Yeah.
That way there's extra no confusion. I gave you his business card, call him up.
Yeah.
But the difference for the insurance is they're not going to give you a discount on a house that had original construction bolts. It's just not going to work.
Okay.
You're too
gotcha.
high risk to them.
High risk. All right. So those are the very good conversations to have right there
Yes.
because it's lost in translation. You can get
Oh, yeah.
confused. People don't understand where our job starts and ends, and it's called the scope of work, and they just don't get that.
Yeah.
And I have to explain that a lot, and I don't mind explaining it, but when the same realtor calls me back
Yeah,
again
yeah.
and again, she's
Not
not
fun.
paying attention.
I hear you.
So anyway, good tips for home inspectors there and home buyers. If we recommend a foundation specialist, you call this guy
There you go.
and he'll clarify.
We'll take care of you.
We're not code inspectors.
That's right.
Not code inspectors. Okay.
I like to call you guys the messengers.
The messengers.
Yeah.
All right.
You're there to give a message.
Yeah.
You're not making anything up. You're just telling them what they have.
We're there to tell you the condition of the property that day.
Yep.
And that is it.
And see you later.
We're not going to tell you how much longer your water heater is going to last or your anchor bolts are going to last. Now, what's the correct term for bolting? Is it bolting? Is it anchoring? What is it?
It's a good question. We're going to consider it bolting.
Okay.
Anchoring would be, a term used back in the day, I would say. Very common. Does your house have anchoring? The bolting, usually when someone says it's already been bolted or the bolting usually indicates it was a newer upgrade.
Okay.
So that's how I like to differentiate the differences between the two.
Okay. Got it. YC was nice enough to bring his shoebox.
That's right.
He's a shoe shiner on the
That's where I
side.
keep my snacks. The secret door over here.
So why didn't you paint this gray?
All right. It's a good question. Everyone always asks me the same
I'm
thing.
going to paint this gray for you
All
before you
right,
leave.
Let's do it.
I think I might have some gray paint.
Nice.
So anyway, this here's an anchor plate.
Yep.
All right. Now, how big do these bolts have to be?
Good question. So depends on what our engineer calls out. The standard is 5 inches.
That's
Depends
a
on-
long bolt.
Yeah. 1/2 inch by 5 inches. So depends on the stories, how many stories the house has.
Mhm.
The bolt size will change, but ultimately that's usually your standard. And I've seen a lot of companies, try to go ahead and, install these that have never done it before and end up completely destroying the foundation. They over tighten them. Either they're too loose, they're sticking out. They can't get through the rebar. So
Now, I've also seen these with threaded rod and
Yep.
a bolt. Is that wrong?
it's just a different method of installation.
So you can do it.
Yep.
Okay, that's allowed.
Yep.
Okay. And up here, how long do these have to be?
Well, they're not going to cross usually the 2x4, so they usually 3-4 inches max.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, 2x4 is 3.5. Okay, so on top, we have flat washers. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so these are what we call standard square washers.
Okay.
And this is a great visual aid for home inspectors or homeowners in general. You know, you were just mentioning earlier how you were able to inspect the anchor bolts from the ventilation screens, which is a great idea. But ultimately, if you go to a property and the original main home was an original construction build, but they had an addition at the rear of the residence, you would see the difference between anchor bolts. For instance, the rear of the residence will have the square washer, the new up to code locations.
Right.
And then the main house would have the standard circular washer. So
yeah, and it's going to have a threaded rod coming through. These are actual bolts.
yep, there's exactly it. That's the difference.
So that's the difference.
Yep.
So if it's up to code, it's going to have bolts, not threaded rod.
No, it could have a threaded rod, John, but it has to be a square washer.
Oh, okay. So once again, the threaded rod is okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But
Got
again, the spacing and the width of it varies when they installed it. Depends on the year built. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if it's a new construction, it's going to have, a threaded rod, but it's going to have a square washer. So
Okay.
the biggest thing to remember is that if it has a square washer, it's 99% of the time going to be up to code.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the main difference there. And the insurance companies, depending on which one you guys use, the homeowner uses or the new buyer, they're going to want to see those square washers. So that's very important.
Got it. Okay, square washers. Square washers.
Yep,
They're
square
in.
washers.
It's the latest thing.
That's right. And this guy has to be, spaced out depending on how many stories the house is as well. So if it's a 1-story house, they need to be every 6 feet. If it's a 2-story house, they need to be every 4. But there are very, very specific requirements from the corners, from where sill plates, butt up to each other, and where the screens are. There's a whole section of requirements prior to just installing these plates.
You can't just do what you want.
That's
you have
right.
to follow
That's
procedure.
right. You got to follow. You're never going to pass city inspection just throwing them around.
Now, let's talk about the city inspectors.
Let's hear
Do
it.
they actually get into the house?
It's a good question. A lot of people ask that question. So it really depends on the city. And they're actually getting very smart now. So they do a lot of virtual inspections where you have to film the house from the exterior. You have to crawl it. You have to measure everything on video. Certain counties, for instance, city of Pasadena, not only do they go ahead and inspect everything, which they should, they do a torque test on the bolts as well. So you have to have a deputy inspector. So depends on the city, but ultimately, most cities will have someone go underneath and crawl. The question is, how far do they go? That's the thing.
I haven't seen any city inspectors do anything but poke their head in the crawl space.
They'll get in and come right back out, and which is why they want the photographs and videos, because there are people that will just go in and install. I've been to several homes, just by the access points, you'll find these. The rest of the house is all missing.
Yeah,
it's they just scam the homeowner. It's terrible.
I know.
And the thing is, they don't realize this is a safety reinforcement for earthquakes. This is not just a cosmetic. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is what's going to hold your house for an earthquake. So it's more than just scamming the customer. It's a really it's a terrible thing.
Now you're putting people at risk.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff, man. So yeah, thanks for bringing the shoebox.
Yeah, please paint it for me.
I need to paint that for you.
I've had this thing for over 10 years. It looks great.
Why is your foundation made out of wood?
You got to paint this also.
Yeah,
the sill plate has to be pressure treated.
I
didn't want to carry around.
I think it's time for a 2.0 here.
You know what the problem is? This thing gets thrown around the truck. It's gonna have that. It's gonna get torn. And I'm not treating this thing like.
You know what I might do? I might have to construct one of these for you and just show people how to do it correctly, and then I'll ship it to you.
Yeah, maybe we should do that.
Yeah,
this bolt is coming out. We got to tighten that.
Okay. All right.
I'll call the deputy inspector.
All right. You got any Fritos in there?
Maybe.